This podcast is for general informational purposes only and represents the individual opinions of Dr. Dmitry Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, Dr. Suzanne Mignon, and the guests. It does not constitute the practice of medicine or other professional healthcare services and should not be taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Please don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, but more importantly, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Reviews not only help us grow listeners, but also help us grow as a show, improve our content, and make us better.
We'll get to the things that happened to me while I was in Chicago that were interesting that I found while I was at the American Academy of Psychiatry and Law Conference. We will also get to the things that happened to me yesterday that I think deserve mentioning because they're cultural issues. But we begin today with a movie that I saw a couple of days ago. Have you guys heard of this movie called Old Dads?
Is it about you or?
It actually was about me.
Is it a documentary about you?
It very well could have been. Could have been.
I have heard of it, but I did not see the movie. But
so it was written and directed. Yeah, it was written and directed by my favorite modern comedian, Bill Burr.
Oh yeah, that guy's funny.
He's just hilarious, and it's basically just his comedy made into an hour and a half movie or so.
Okay.
And it was just, old dads trying to live in a new world and trying to raise their kids in like the new world. Which actually we're gonna
and you find yourself
end up talking about in a couple of segments. But so there was a lot of like young people speak in there.
Oh my gosh.
And
speak.
it would be yeek. Young people speak. And there was one term that I had never heard before, so I thought it would be the perfect youth speak segment. So let's do our youth speak segment first.
Generation X explains youth speak?
All right, have you heard the term no cap?
Oh yeah.
Really?
So you're
That's
really
been
old
around
dad.
for a
Oh my
while.
god, you're really old dad.
Am I the only one that hasn't heard this? I've never heard this before.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, this has been around for forever. No cap.
So, Steph, as the young person, tell us what that means.
I believe I know what it means, but I might butcher it. No cap means no kidding, no lies. Like,
Yeah, it's not
seriously,
lies.
no
This is what
no
it is,
BS,
yeah.
no cap.
That's right. That's exactly what I mean. No lies.
Yeah.
And I had never heard it before. And it was at the end of the movie where Bill Burr's friend was like, I don't want to ruin this, but this isn't really a spoiler.
Yeah.
It's just that Bill Burr's friend has this controlling wife, and he sort of says what he needs to say at the end of the movie to her about that. And a guy walks up to him and gives him dap, and he goes, no cap. And he's like, yes, yes, because he's been trying to talk to like young people, like with young language.
He's saying
movie.
But you can't say that now because no cap is out now.
Yeah, it's
What?
been out.
What's
Yeah.
it replaced with?
It's already
It's
probably
done.
different. It's done. It's been over and done.
What's
You
it
know what?
replaced with then?
You know what? You're very old dad. No cap.
There's literally no disputing that.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly.
I'm not going to dispute any of what you just said.
Your kids didn't go through the no cap phase.
My oldest kid is 11. How could he
Well,
go through it? He doesn't even.
Yo,
His no cap means he didn't wear his hat to his
wait,
baseball
is
game.
it
That's
the
what no
same
cap
kid?
means to him.
Is it the same kid who think he has what is it?
Riz?
Riz. So
No,
he can
no,
he can have
it's
Riz,
the
but he
middle
can't say
one.
no cap. Or the middle one has Riz.
Maybe they do know what it is, but I've never heard him say it. I've never
You need
heard
to
it.
ask your kids, but
Wait,
they don't
so
say it anymore.
What's
don't say
replaced
it.
it?
I mean, should we get one of the kids on or something?
Do we have
We'll
time
get
for
him on
that?
next time. We'll get him on next time.
I mean, mine aren't here to to say it, but
We'll get him on
try to
next
phone a
time.
friend.
No. You're supposed to be our young person ambassador.
Me?
Are you? Yeah.
Yeah,
Our ambassador.
I'm the ambassador, the
The
ambassador.
ambassador. The young person ambassador. But no, apparently you don't
What
know.
has
Okay.
replaced no cap? I don't even know. There's so many, and so much crap comes out of my kids' mouths that I'm just like, really?
And you never write it down thinking it'd be a good segment?
I think the one
No.
that might have replaced it is facts.
Fact, yeah,
Facts.
facts. No,
But fax is old. Like, I remember fax.
Really? But maybe it's making you come back.
Like from
But-
the 90s.
But there's also, you have to use your hand. Facts, you know. Like,
Oh, I see. Okay, it's the hand gesture
the
that makes
facts, you know.
When
Yeah,
when I was a
the
kid,
hand
it
gesture.
was for real. That's what it was when I was a kid. It was for real. But that's
Yeah.
way old. That's 30 years now. But this is not an old people. Maybe
More
we
like-
should do an old people speak
Hey,
too.
that's what you did there. That's what you did there 30 years
I'm
ago.
not gonna
Maybe
be part of
maybe
old
50,
people speak.
Maybe 40, 50
Yeah.
years ago.
No, no. Of course, Suzanne, you're our young person ambassador.
exactly.
That's right. You're our ambassador, and Steph is our resident young person.
There you go.
who's not as young, but
Oh,
still
man.
young.
Okay, no cap.
Right, so I'm a forensic psychiatrist. This is the field that I really love in psychiatry. So every year at the end, near the end of October, there is my association's forensic conference, which is Apple. It's not Apple like the phone or the computer. It's AAPL, which, by the way, is also the ticker symbol for
For
Apple
the Apple
computers,
stock.
but
Yeah.
right. But it's Apple, American Academy of Psychiatry and Law. It is my favorite conference. It is, to me, the most interesting thing that I do all year because there's some nexus of psychiatry and law for me that just kind of clicks in my brain. But anyway, so I went to this thing. And of course, I learned a bunch of stuff that I didn't know before. But random stuff happened while I was there that just seemed kind of, I don't know, annoying or interesting, or maybe it was just interesting to me. So I thought maybe I would bring it up for a brief discussion. In the mornings, they have a poster panel where the people that submit research, but they do it in poster form. So it's basically a PowerPoint with a huge poster. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And they have them on these easels that are maybe 4 feet apart. And there's a bunch of them. So I was standing in the middle of one of these easels, these two easels, looking at something. And someone came up behind me and said, quote, "Can you please move? Not excuse me. Not, can I get through, please? Not, can I go this way?" No, it was just, "Can you please move?" I didn't know them. I didn't know who they were. And I kind of turned around and I'm like, really? But then I'm like, okay. And I moved. But am I wrong to think that that's a little rude?
No, I mean, at least they said please. But I see what you mean. It's probably the tone, the intonation.
Yeah.
The please probably did not matter the way they said it.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Dmitry, you missed other cues that people were trying to get you to move, and then this person just finally said, "Could you please move?"
My
But to
back
be
was
fair,
to them. How
to
could
be
I have
fair,
seen anything?
most people can look over Dmitry. To be fair, like
Yeah.
people can read over your head. So
And for the
I
record,
think
she
I'm
could too.
taller than you.
she's
How
shorter
did this
than you?
become a referendum on my height? Does that make it any less rude? Whether she can or can't see over me? Which she could, by the way.
She could. Okay,
She could.
She could.
Okay.
I've been in a situation where there's a crowd somewhere, anywhere, reading out a menu or something. If I can read, if I can see, I don't need to tell people to move around. I have visual. I don't care if somebody's in front of me. All I want to see is see it.
Right.
So if that person was reading it and seeing it, I don't understand why they would feel the need to tell you to move
I mean,
away.
I banged into someone at the airport and we were both like, sorry.
Right. that's what-
Yeah, right?
There's other ways to say it. You could say, "Oh, excuse me, I'm trying to look at this and
Right.
I can't see right now." Something like that. But then we also have people who aren't the best communicators and don't have the social skills, and maybe that's what was going on.
as forensic psychiatrists, they don't have the best communication skills. Suzanne, could you imagine these people on the stand?
Listen, you've seen people on the stand. Okay.
Actually, I have. That's true.
All right. So not everybody has phenomenal communication skills.
So one of the other things that was going on there, and one of the reasons I absolutely adore this conference, other than just the interest of the topics, but they drown us in coffee. Just drown us. They give us coffee in the morning. They give us coffee in the mid-morning between blocks, and then the afternoon with soda. So it's like a candy store of coffee. And so I'm over caffeinated. Plus, I have a bottle of water with me all the time. So I am going to the bathroom like maybe twice an hour. And I get this feeling that
go to the bathroom with you, Dmitry. Everything.
Yes, but this is not the side that you think. This is not the
Okay.
side that you think. So I'm going to pee like almost twice an hour. And I get this sense that when I get up from these things that people kind of look at you. And if you get up more than twice, they wonder what the hell's wrong with you. I'm wondering if people think I like had diabetes or something because I was going to the bathroom twice an hour. And it was just because there was too much coffee and
That's right.
and no one else was doing it. So like maybe it was just me, but I don't know. It was just one of those things where when you pass someone in the hallway for the third time in 45 minutes and they stare at you like, why do you keep going in there? Because they're sitting next to in a seat next, and they're like giving you an eye. It just
Like on a plane.
it may be a little self-conscious, but
Maybe you could have been sick. That's fine.
I appreciate that.
Did it really matter what they thought?
It's a very
Because
small
apparently it
concept.
does if you're bringing it out.
It's just one of those things that came up in my head.
You see,
Yeah,
I hear a lot of negative thoughts today. You know,
There are a lot of negative
thoughts.
thoughts.
Maybe it's all you in your head, and people. You know, I always tell people, you know, what you think is going on is only in your head. People are going to their own world at the same time. Not everything's about you. You know, but we can talk about that later.
There's going to be more of that later on in this. Yeah.
Like delusions of reference much?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
Well, I was also taking Uber here and there. I like taking cabs. I prefer taking cabs places. So I took a cab to the United Center, and I got in the cab. Another thing that sort of made me feel self-conscious, speaking of that topic, is I got in the cab because I waited for him to pull into the hotel and drop off someone. I asked him if he's open. He said yes. I got in, shut the door, and I said United Center, which is maybe 15 minutes away. And the guy looked at me like I had ruined his day. Like, you mean you're not going to the airport or some place where I can make $100 on your... No, I need to go to I can't walk there. It's like 4 miles. And I was like, I ruined his day.
I think
Almost
it's probably
like-
because he was thinking about traffic, going to the game, getting stuck there.
There was no traffic that night. It was not the night we went. It was the night, the Bulls game,
Preseason
2
game,
nights
yeah.
before.
Yeah.
It was a preseason game. There was nobody on the road. It was a Thursday night. And I'm like, he's just staring at me. I'm like, yeah, United Center. He's like, oh, okay. And he turns on the meter. It's almost like they don't want us. The cabs are like, they're dying and they don't want business. Like, who cares?
So why don't you Uber?
I prefer cabs because usually I don't have to wait for them. In big cities, they're all everywhere. Like, I don't know
that's
how
true.
Uber took off in New York. I really have no idea. Because
They're
you
not
can
in the
walk down
cities.
the
They're
street,
probably not. They're in the
and there's-
suburbs.
There is no real suburb in New York City.
Yeah,
Not in
but
the city, no. If you
the-
go to Long Island and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, Long Island, yes.
Uber.
So,
Yeah,
I can
yeah.
understand.
The-
But New York City,
No, but
especially
there's
Manhattan,
Ubers
I
and
don't
lifts
understand.
everywhere there too.
Yeah, but the
And
yellow
the
cabs
time.
in the cities is
But
better than
why
the
would
Uber.
you wait? Why would you wait for an Uber for 10 minutes to get through the
I
traffic?
never
when you
had to
can
wait
walk down
for
to
an
the big alley?
Uber for 10 minutes in New York.
In New York?
In the city, I never had to wait that long.
Yeah, I gotta wait because it takes
Never.
them a while to get there because of the traffic. I can walk down into a big avenue and flag a cab down. So I prefer to take cabs, especially from airports. Like, you'll never see me take an Uber from an airport because I got to go to a special location and I got to put in the phone. I walk out the front door of an arrival section and there's a line of cabs waiting there, and they're
Right.
usually the same price.
Mhm. Yeah.
So anyway, that was one of those things. And finally, one of the observations I made when I was flying out is there are still people running at the airport. Have you ever done that? Have you ever had to run at the airport?
Maybe once in my life I was very late.
Probably.
I had to run. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
sh-
I mean, if you don't want, you might use your flight, man. Like there's gotta be the time might be so tight that if you take a risk of walking it, you might regret it because you get there and the plane the door is shut.
I remember distinctly what happened. I was going back to Arizona after I had graduation here, and I had to go back and finish internship. And I screwed up the time in my head because I was thinking, I don't remember if it was Florida time, Arizona time, whatever the time it was that I thought my flight left. I was off by 3 hours because
Oh
I
my
just had that
God.
time. Listen.
What?
So when I finally realized and I looked, I'm like, oh, this is the time I have to go. No joke. From the time I got to the airport, I had maybe 30 minutes to get in through security into my gate.
Yeah.
Made it. Ran.
I don't
happened
understand
to
how you
me.
can make that mistake. They send you like reminders like days and days in
My
advance every
mine
day.
This was before they would text reminders and everything.
right.
This was
Mine
when?
was worse.
2004?
Mine was worse. Mine was in Miami. I booked a flight like long time ago. In my head, I'm flying from Miami. I was in Fort Lauderdale, but in my head, I'm flying from Miami. So I wake up on time. I'm taking my sweet time. I'm gonna, I have enough time. So I drive peacefully. As soon as I get to the airport, I'm looking for the, where do I get dropped in the Uber? And I'm like, oh boy, I'm flying out of Fort Lauderdale. And that's when I
Oh my
realized
God.
while I'm the Uber dropping me in Miami, I said, you know what? I'm gonna change the direction back to Fort Lauderdale. The guy said, the driver said, "Are you serious?" And I said, "Yes. Please take the express lane. I'll give you tip if I make it on time." And just like Suzanne said, as soon as I got there, I sprinted. And when I get to security, I told one of the attendant, "I'm gonna miss my flight. Can I please keep the line? I'm really missing my flight." And they let me go through. But I was running.
You
And
guys,
and
that
I'm
actually
on
makes
time.
me feel better about going to the wrong hotel.
Yeah.
I put up
Yeah.
the TikTok
Yeah.
that I went to the wrong hotel because who knew that the city of Chicago, an enormous city, has more than one downtown Marriott.
Go
Apparently not
figure.
this guy.
Go
So that makes me
figure.
feel better.
No,
But,
man.
like,
I was like, God, why do I take Miami for the longest time?
okay. 20 years
happens to
ago,
the
I
best
can
of them.
understand that. But nowadays, with Clear and pre-check, I showed up 2 hours early. I got in through Clear and pre-check in less than 5 minutes, and I was like, I ended up like getting my steps in because I was walking the terminal. Like, I don't understand how you can show up late.
Okay,
a
but
flight
sometimes life happens,
today.
Dmitry. As a treating provider, you should know that sometimes life happens, right? What if somebody's dog ran out the house and they spent the time chasing the dog, right? There's all different things that can happen. What if their kid got
Tire.
sick before they left? What if
Yeah.
they locked their keys
Yeah.
out in whatever it is?
The
So
other
many
side,
possibilities.
what if you're on a flat tire? That's fine.
Life can happen.
Life happens.
Okay.
Remember, Dmitry, you have to challenge his thoughts.
Yes.
The challenge negative thoughts is
We'll talk about it.
Challenge negative
Maybe that's an idea we can talk about later. Yeah.
We were all set to talk about something else today, but two things happened yesterday that are related to cultural, I guess, issues, if you want to call them that, and I feel the need to bring them up. So the first thing that happened is we needed to go to a particular post office to get passport paperwork done because apparently for children, you have to physically go to a location to send it. So you have to make an appointment. So we made an appointment for 11:30. We got there at 11:30. 12 o'clock rolls around, and this woman saunters out and calls us in. And I guess I kind of lost my on her because I'm like, oh, didn't mean to bother you from your busy day. And she's like, I was on break. And I'm like, you were on break for half an hour? Like, we've been here for half an hour. What's the point of... And it just became one of these... It became one of these Karen moments where...
You're the Karen?
I'm bitching at her. I don't know. Is it a guy can be Karen? What's the guy version of Karen?
Isn't it Ken?
Ken.
Ken?
That's a Ken.
Is it Ken? But Ken is not bad. Ken is in love with Barbie. I'm okay with being a Ken. But it wasn't that. I just made a couple of sarcastic things, and she started getting like, well, if you start doing that, I'm going to curse at you. And if I start cursing, there's going to be a problem. And she brought the supervisor over, and I told the supervisor exactly what I thought too. But this brings up a thing. Postal workers get 2 10-minute breaks per 8-hour shift plus a 30-minute lunch. And I looked this up. Now, that's for carriers. I don't know if that's for teller workers too, but she wasn't a teller worker. She was working in the back somewhere. This is what she does. So she didn't have a half an hour break. Plus, you can't take your 10-minute break before your lunch break. I read this. This is true. Okay. So tell me how you were on break for half an hour. Like,
maybe she used the word break when she meant her lunch. Okay. But from what I understand,
because she said, and I have lunch later.
Okay.
She said that. So it wasn't a lunch break.
Maybe it was a party break. I don't know.
And I sort of lost because to me, this is a young person work ethic thing. And you can tell me if I'm wrong about this.
Get that. But the post office is also a very rigid, and it can be a stressful place to work too, from what I understand. I mean,
have you
probably wouldn't mess with somebody who has the power to screw up my passport application for my kids.
Frankly, at that moment, I didn't care. I needed her to know that I thought her work ethic sucked. And I think this is something that is not just me. I think this is something we're running into and I don't even think she was that young. Like, I don't know. So, I can't tell by her appearance, but she was definitely younger than both of us. And I get the sense that this new generation just has this entitlement of, yeah, I work, but they're going to pay me. And like, I don't need to work, but like I do because I work. Like, it's just this kind of idea of, I deserve more things. And we talked about this with the guy that was like the CEO guy. And I sort of laid into that kind of mentality of the superiors taking advantage of their employees. And I still believe that because employees that work hard deserve to be compensated. People like this who don't work hard, who are constantly late for things. And this is I'm not the first one because I read the reviews on this and they mentioned this particular person by name in those reviews. So this is not just me. Just think that I'm being a Ken about it. Those people don't deserve jobs.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm being rigid about that, but
no. I mean, there's places you go, customer service will be bad at certain time of the day. So I remember I was in Chicago, in late night, I was trying to find food. I went to Subway. It was maybe like 2 a.m. There's no good service at 2 a.m. The person working there is tired. He's upset. They have to work all night. And I went there, the guy, young kid, had his headphones in, talking to his family or girlfriend while I'm ordering food. And he has never looked at me on my face. It's like just talking on the phone and I'm putting the order in. So there was no eye contact. I'm like, and I'm thinking the same thing as you. Why do you do a job that you don't want to do? Like, because they need money. But you need money, but they're not happy at that job. It's a crappy job at 2 a.m. You're not going to get good service. So your expectation at some time have to be lowered.
Sure. And I think that we shouldn't generalize too over all of the younger people working either, because that's not fair to them either. I think that you're going to have people who are just going through the motions to get their paycheck and doing as minimal as possible to get it. And then you have people that go above and beyond. I used to manage a retail store for some years, and we saw it even back then. You know, it depends
to this degree
on that individual. Yeah.
I don't know, man. Today is old dad day, man.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, man. You want a soapbox. We're gonna call this episode Dimitri's soapbox. There you go.
If the management is letting them get away with it, there's some fault of the management.
Right. And I was gonna say that it's part of the management too. Like you said, that person has several reviews. Nobody cares to read the reviews. Nobody cares to correct that. Right.
That post office is a 1.6.
So nobody's doing their job.
There's ratings for post office.
There is, apparently. And I read them as we were waiting. I'm like, and I saw the name because they were like, when we get on there, she's like, tell this person that her 11:30 is here. And I read the reviews and that person was named.
Well, it's like you go to a DMV and you expect to get good service. I've never heard somebody say, oh, wow, I had a good time at the DMV.
Let me tell you something. I've been to DMV before. Infinitely better service. Infinitely better. These people do their jobs like you wouldn't even believe. The line at a DMV that I went to was literally down the street. Those people were smiling and nice and friendly, and they were like on time. They're like, who's next? They weren't in the back on break. They were doing their job. And this is a government job too.
Right.
Okay. And so it's an individual thing. It's not necessarily the location. I couldn't do their job because it would drive me nuts, but they were doing it, and they were doing it with a smile. They were cracking jokes. Like,
Well, maybe they have better management.
Sure, but that also comes from management too, and the tone that gets set for
absolutely.
everybody.
Maybe they have better
Absolutely.
incentive, better management. Maybe they have employee of the week, employee of the month program. So there's things.
There's a lot of different factors.
Right.
All right. All right. We'll move on to the next thing that happened yesterday. And this is, all right. So there's an apology culture nowadays that to me is, I don't know how to put it. It's gotten to the point where every whatever you say can be taken incorrectly or can offend someone.
Mhm.
And the problem I have with this, it offends me, so therefore you can't say it thing, or you should be fired, or this should be taken away, is there's no objective measure for what is and isn't offensive anymore. It's just whatever I think is offensive. And it offended me, therefore it is offensive.
Mhm.
And that can be used by nefarious people as a weapon.
Mhm.
I don't like you, therefore I'm going to take something you said and I'm going to go and I'm going to get you fired. And it can also be taken by people that have no concept of how to regulate their emotions and used as a weapon, not purposefully, but because they can't do it themselves. They need to go out and have that other person feel as bad as them in some way. And so what happened is there's a bunch of universities that do this thing called a wall of hate. So what it is they put up a wall, a literal wall, and they have students go to the wall and put phrases or things that they've heard that is negative about them on the wall that feels bad for them. And then they take a sledgehammer and they break the wall down. And it's a psychological exercise of breaking down hate. It's literally breaking down hate.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a catharsis of, I hear these things, but they don't mean anything to me. Right? Okay. Fantastic, by the way, right? A fantastic sort of thing that you would think would be good.
Yeah.
Right? So the most recent one at a school, the things that were put on the wall were kill the Jews and gas the Jews. That's what was put on. And because that's something people hear. And especially now, they're hearing this. So somebody complained about that to the university authorities, and they canceled the program. Not just this program this year, but forevermore. And they issued
because
this
of
apology.
that specific sentence. I mean, I can imagine there was a lot of different negative sentence said over the years. It'd be probably worse than that.
Right. So it depends on who you're talking to, whether or not it was worse than that. But this is the apology that was written. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm going to read part of it. All right. This year's, quote, wall of hate, unquote, project resulted in undue and unintended stress, anxiety, and alarm among many members of our community, and understandably so. The type of display this year was a grievous mistake, given the lack of advance notice and contextual information coupled with the Middle East crisis and ongoing social strife in many communities across our nation. The student affairs event that has taken place at this university and other colleges and universities across the country for over the last 20 years without incident and provided an invaluable lesson in the evils of hate. However, what did transpire this year has taught us a valuable lesson not mentioned, by the way, in this apology. Student management, student affairs, and their entire team have reviewed and continue to assess the event from earlier this week, and as such, we have taken corrective measures so that this will not occur in the future. This includes discontinuing the particular wall of hate display ritual. So, essentially what they're saying is, it worked. It did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Somebody heard something, they put it on the wall.
And somebody read it, got offended without understanding the context, probably, and they canceled it because why?
This one
why?
person felt
So what-
offended and took it out of context and
Yeah.
didn't understand the purpose.
I don't know if it's one person or a group of people, or it's one person that mentioned it to a group of people who then said it. The point is, it did its job. Like, that's
Right.
what you're supposed to
Right.
put on
So
there, because
I
that's
ge-
what you hear.
I guess it treated is as if these words were graffitied on a wall somewhere. No, these
Exactly.
words were plastered on the project that is supposed to be there for that. So
Exactly.
whoever felt like they were targeted or they felt bad about what they heard would be able to go and write it down and break it down, right? Because that's what
right.
it's a therapeutic medium.
I would argue even beyond that. Let's say it was graffitied on there. Let's say it was not a student that put that on there, and it was graffitied on there. The exercise is to literally break that wall. So
Right.
it would still serve its function. And this need, and again, I'm going to sound like an old dad here, but this need to ruin, fire, cancel people for the thing that makes you feel bad instead of handling your own emotions is getting worse, because now presidents of the universities and committees are forced, they're not forced, they're choosing to issue these apologies, and I'm using air quotes, so that they can save their job. Because what if this guy didn't issue the apology? Maybe the board would be like, well, you have to do it or we'll just go get someone else. Well, you're going to not be president anymore.
Yeah. You know what I think it is? I think, I'm assuming, I'm not sure. I think, if you go back in 40, 50 years, the media was not that accessible to everybody. For you to get news, you'd have to purchase a newspaper, you have to turn on TV. It wasn't on your phone. My point is, schools were not really worried about getting bad press. So nowadays, committees, school boards, they are in a hurry to squash stories as early as possible before it goes to Instagram and TikTok and be over the nation. Because how many times you've heard a student or a teacher said something in a little town somewhere, and you all in Miami hearing about it. So I'm guessing in that example you just gave, the school probably wanted to get that conflict go away as fast as possible before it goes to Instagram or something like that, without even dealing with the issue. Because dealing with the issue would have been explaining why the wall was there, why the wall is needed, instead of reacting to somebody's complaining. The right move would have been educating people why the wall is there.
Yes.
But they don't want to deal with
you.
that, because if they do that, you dragging the story on, and you're taking a risk of getting exposed on social media or getting on the national news.
Sure, there's a lot of fear about bad reputations and worrying about having lawsuits and worried about the bad press and everything else. When I agree, it could have been handled much differently, where they use this opportunity as a time to educate. And wow, a university educating, right? This is,
oh my God, God forbid.
What a concept, right? And this is coming from someone who teaches at the college level. But I think they could have used that opportunity to educate their student body, to educate their staff, whoever it was, whatever group of people were feeling offense to this project, and educate them on the purpose of it and the reason why this exists. And yeah, this is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. And this is why we don't say these things. And this is why we break this wall down. That symbolic reference of it. So I think the apology was a way to deal with bad press that they
100%. That's what it was. It's 100% a cop out to deal with. And a lot of these apologies, by the way, are written by lawyers and just read out loud as a blanket statement.
Yeah.
But this particular situation, it's almost like the irony here that you are canceling a project that made you feel bad, which is the project that's supposed to make you feel bad so that you can not find ways around not feeling bad and cathartically, releasing your emotions is the irony of this is unbelievable. It's literally what it was designed to do is this thing that you're not supposed to do.
I think it's part of a larger problem, and I might repeat myself. I think nowadays people are afraid of discussion. They are afraid of having
Yes.
opposing, arguments instead of going through the pain of having that discussion. A debate doesn't have to be a fight, but a debate is healthy. Instead of sitting down and saying and hearing each other, why do you think that's bad? And I'm gonna listen to you, and after I listen to you, after I hear you, I'm going to attempt to tell you why we're doing it. So maybe we can meet in the middle. Maybe what you thought was wrong, but I'm going to try to get you the other perspective. They're not interested in having that debate. They're interested of trying to avoid the uncomfortableness or the awkwardness of having that conversation. So they want to squash it away.
And it's both sides. I'm not picking on one side or another. You got one side trying to take books out of schools,
right?
And the other side,
so
they don't want to talk about anything that makes them in the feels. And there was just something recently. Gavin Newsom in California was trying to ban doctors from saying anything about vaccines that he didn't personally agree with.
Yeah.
And it's like, or it wasn't that specific, but things that he didn't, that the law was going to consider incorrect or something. Like that. You're banning doctors from doing that, and it's like. I may not agree with the doctor that tells you don't get the vaccine or whatever, but it's your doctor. You know what I mean? You should listen to them and ask them these things. And it's the same thing with books. Like you're banning books because you don't like the content.
So not even the content. People are they were doing it with a blanket, thing without even discussing the books. I read somewhere there's a book that they banned in, I forget which state or which town, because of the word gay. G-A-Y. But meanwhile, that word in that context wasn't the last name of a person. Let's just say Richard Gay. It was just a last name. It wasn't even the word of sexual orientation. It was a last name. So because somebody has a name, G-A-Y, gay, they banned the book without even getting into the context why the word was used.
Yeah. And this goes back to the Goldwater thing we talked about last time.
Right.
Is speech you don't like is not. The answer is not censorship, it's more speech.
It's more speech. The answer for misinformation is more information. It's not canceling.
That's exactly.
That's the cure to misinformation.
Exactly. And all right, so Suzanne wanted to bring up the fact that this month is
the end of the month now, but it is National Domestic Violence Awareness. This is extremely important for everyone. Not just, we want to talk about sports and how it relates to domestic violence. Charles Barkley just came out, was it this week or last week, talking about domestic violence in sports. And we know that there have been players who have in multiple sports that have been accused of domestic violence, and sometimes it gets swept under the rug and not dealt with properly by agencies as well. So even if charges aren't pressed, which a lot of the times it's not in domestic violence cases because the person being abused, the victim, they don't want to press the charges because things might get worse, or they just want the person to leave them alone, and they think that by not pressing charges it might calm things down more. There's so many different reasons, but when we look at the sports industry as well, we don't necessarily see any severe penalties for domestic violence.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Charles Barkley was coming out to say too.
Yeah. I think that there's a trend from the sports leagues to try to push it to law enforcement. They always say we don't know the facts, we're gonna wait for the investigation to come out. And then after that, I've heard people drop cases because of the person that the victim decided to drop charges. And if there's no charges, then nothing can really happen,
Exactly.
And then it's a message. So
law enforcement didn't do anything. So no, this person doesn't need to have any penalties against them or anything within their agency, because apparently if law enforcement doesn't do anything about domestic violence, he doesn't have to do it.
Yeah. And again, because they probably get scared of being sued. I could see a player getting a lawyer suing the league because by law, they committed no crime. So how would you determine that they committed a crime if the law enforcement said there's no crime committed? So I think people are just a little bit.
Well, they weren't charged with a crime. It doesn't mean the crime wasn't committed.
Correct. There wasn't.
I think we need to be careful with those words.
Right. It's not innocent. It's not guilty. When you're found
Right,
not
right,
guilty,
right,
that
right.
doesn't mean you're innocent.
You didn't mean it
Yeah.
happened. You just didn't found that, right, you were in charge.
Yeah,
Right.
or the charges weren't pressed for the varying reasons that they don't get
Right.
pressed.
Right.
Should we play the Charles Barkley sound?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we have it.
All right. The sound provided by NBA on TNT.
I got one more question. I don't care. He says go to commercial, but I got a serious question for you. There's a couple of disturbing incidents of domestic violence in the NBA right now. What are we doing to address that? Because that is you can't put your hands on women, man. And we should be at the forefront in sports when the men hit women. So what are we as a league going to do about that?
Well, again, that's an area where we're not looking to compete against other leagues when you say forefront. So I think all the leagues are trying to address this issue. But I know, again, our Players Association, credit to them, this wasn't adversarial. We put in place a new program for how we deal with, first of all, accusations of domestic violence even before they're prosecuted. Part of it goes to training of our players, counseling of our players to make sure they understand during high stress situations that, like, obviously never resort to violence against anyone. And so we're addressing it. We have, state-of-the-art counseling professionals dealing with our players. But of course, and if a guy, does cross the line, the consequences are enormous.
The consequences are enormous if they get charged with something. One of the other things too, they talk about domestic violence and many people think of it incorrectly as only physical violence.
Right.
Correct.
And even people who are in domestic violence relationships, they'll say, well, they didn't hit me. They didn't punch me. They didn't push me. They didn't do this. But we see a lot of the psychological abuse that comes with domestic violence as well, because domestic violence is really about power and control. And so
Right.
You'll see things with degradation. You'll see things where the victim becomes isolated. The friends they used to hang out with, they don't hang out with them anymore because the abuser is controlling all of their interactions with others. And it might seem really flattering at first, where this person just wants to spend all their time with you and that's it. But then it turns into a level of isolation that this person loses their belief that they have people they can reach out on and lean on for help and try to get help out of their situation. So, we like to provide resources for people as well. So we just want to go ahead and give the National Domestic Violence Hotline as well, which is 1-800-799-7233, or you can text START to 88788.
Mental health tip of the daytime, of course, brought to you by
Nobody.
Day full of hiccups? Need a shake-up? Listen up. It's the Psych Effect Podcast Mental Health Tip of the Day.
All right, Steph, you've got our mental health tip of the day.
Yeah. Actually, I try to do it for myself, obviously, but I try to tell everybody in my office when they tell me something that I hear is self-deprecating or self-defeating. I always tell them to, I challenge them and I tell them, how do you know that's true? For example, I hear a lot of people say in my office, I'm not good at this, or I'm not good at my job, or nobody likes me, or, my friend don't want to invite me anymore, or I have no friends, and I'm like, wait, and I've done the exercise with them. I've told them in times, let's take a piece of paper, put down the name of your friends, and they go past 10, 15. I'm like, you see, who told you have no friends? And they tell me, for example, I'm gonna get fired. I'm like, how long you been working at that job again? 15 or so years. Okay, so who told you you're gonna get fired again? So I challenge them and I tell them, listen, we're just an exercise of challenging those thoughts. And I tell them, when you think negative things about yourself or about any situation, try to find the reason why that is not true, instead of focusing on why it's true, right? We put too much energy in negative thinking. We should put that energy in positive thinking and discredit those negative thoughts.
Right, because when we have those negative thoughts, it causes us to feel bad about ourselves. It causes us to not perform as well as we can. We see it, I see it with my students a lot. I'm no good at taking tests. I suck at taking tests. I'm gonna fail. right? They have thoughts in them, you know, and it translates into my clients, you know, I'm not a good person, or they get what we call these automatic thoughts that come into their head. And exactly what you said, Steph, is we have to teach them to challenge those automatic thoughts, which is, it's just a form of cognitive therapy. We are going to try to find something to replace that automatic thought. So I'm a failure. I'm no good at taking tests. Well, why don't we replace that with, I'm going to try my hardest on this test. Right? Switch it up for them, because when we switch that focus to something more positive, you're going to alleviate those feelings of negativity. And
Is
your
that
performance, it's a form of reframing. And your performance will improve.
And that's the essence of cognitive behavioral therapy. Your thoughts cause an emotion, and the emotion causes a behavior. So if you don't challenge that thought from the inception, your behavior will not change. So if you want a different behavior, meaning different attitude, for example, the test taking thing, you have to challenge your thought, and then you reframe it or somewhat challenge it. Well, you in 6th grade, how did you get to 6th grade if you're not good at testing?
You reframe it, you replace it with something, whatever it is.
Right.
And you know,
Excellent.
It's tough.
Excellent. Thank you guys again for joining us. Remember, like, follow, subscribe. We're on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, with all the fun stuff. Facebook too. But you guys know that because you're listening. But
Facebook, you're an old dad.
Tell your friends.
Are you on MySpace, Dmitry? On your high five?
That's
You still have Vine, Dmitry?
That's just perfect.
No cap.
Facts.
The previous podcast is for general informational purposes only and represented the individual opinions of Dr. Dmitry Bick, Dr. Stefan de Graaf, Dr. Suzanne Mignon, and the guests. It does not constitute the practice of medicine or other professional healthcare services and should not be taken as medical advice or an establishment of standard of care. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions.